I have to say that this group is the smartest group I've come across in my life, having gone to all kinds of conferences. The brilliance that comes from a mind that has the cultural background of an ancient civilization, and at the same time is so comfortable with modern science is not comparable. There's no place in the world, no group in the world that can compete with the Indian mind, and I say it with great pride and joy. So Vishal was talking this morning about the bit economy and how, you know, the world is now influenced by bits of information. And he showed a very, well, his talk was spectacular, but there was one slide where he was talking about these three-dimensional objects that come out of the new computers, where you feed information and you get a three-dimensional material object. In this case, it was a flute, wasn't it? But I think the time is not far where you can feed information into computers and get a steak without killing a cow, or anything else that you want, because information is, in fact, considered the raw material of the universe. Well, I'd like to go a little further from the bit to the it. Okay, so it was John Wheeler, who was one of the pioneers in quantum physics, who first used the expression it from bit. So you take away the B and you're left with it. And what John Wheeler was talking about was actually a fact, and I'll try and quote him directly. He said, every quantum fluctuation, every field of force, every fabric of even the space-time continuum derives its meaning, derives its significance, derives its very existence to yes and no questions, and the apparatus elicited answers to those yes and no questions, to those binary codes. And this is a very important point that, you know, John Wheeler was also the man who coined the word black hole and wormhole and all the modern terminology of quantum physics. And yet, a lot of people have not fully grasped what John Wheeler was saying. He was echoing also what Heisenberg had said earlier, one of the pioneers of quantum physics, that nature, the cosmos, doesn't reveal itself to us as it is, but to the questions we ask. So all of scientific endeavor is actually a human endeavor that human beings ask in their consciousness through a human nervous system. And the one fundamental that we still haven't grasped in science, I'd like somebody to turn on the timer so I know what my experience of time is going to be in the next 40 minutes or so, because that's not working right now. Okay, that's good. So the point that Heisenberg made was, I'll repeat, that nature, the cosmos, doesn't reveal itself to us as it is, but to the questions we ask. And that was John Wheeler's it from bit. The bit is information technology. But the it we want to derive from it, I hope, is not only knowledge, but wisdom. And we want to move from an information-based civilization, hopefully, to a knowledge-based and ultimately a wisdom-based planetary culture. Because right now, with all the brilliant minds that we have in this room and elsewhere, I think the focus is on the creation of wealth, and yet 50% of our world lives on less than $2 a day. 20% of our world lives on less than $1 a day. We have created a planet which is unsustainable. We have extreme economic disparities, social injustice, conflict, war, and that's a sign of a very sick planet. And so it took us about 14 billion years to get here, 13.8 billion years to get here, and we have the capacity to destroy it, totally. And so all this brilliance has to move from information to knowledge, and I hope wisdom, wisdom being that knowledge that nurtures the web of existence, that nurtures life, that helps us participate in the ecosystem of which we are a part. So before I go into what I want to talk about today, which is the future of well-being, I want to give you just a little glimpse of our current state of understanding of the universe and our participation in it. So here it is in a few seconds. The universe is about 13.8 billion years in age. It came out of a nothing. Nothing means absence of space, time, energy, information, and matter. So even time began with the Big Bang after what is called cosmic inflation. And today, through our scientific understanding of the universe, and as you know, science is based on theory, experimentation, observation, and then validation. And today's science, the most cutting-edge science is cosmology, with mathematics and physics, where mathematical theories are fed into what are called supercomputers, and then observations are made, and we can look back to the cosmic wave background radiation that began at the end of cosmic inflation. We can fast forward to see what is going to happen in the future. And so these methods of experiment, theory, and observation are validated by scientific peers. And from that, we know that about 70% to 75% of the universe is something called dark energy. And we have no idea what it is. Dark energy is expanding galaxies faster than the speed of light, and they're disappearing over the cosmic horizon, which is 47 billion light years away, and they're disappearing faster than the speed of light. It was something that Einstein hinted as the cosmological constant. But it's not a constant because dark energy increases exponentially as galaxies expand. That's 75%, 70% of the universe. 20% of the universe, so now we come to 95% of the universe, is something called dark matter. And we have no idea what it is, except that it is the most important force in the universe for gravity. It behaves like matter in terms of bending the curvature of space-time, but unlike regular matter or atomic matter, it neither absorbs light, nor reflects light, nor emits light. And if you have two pieces of dark matter colliding, they just go through each other. And were it not for this dark matter, you and I wouldn't be existing, because it's responsible for the majority of the gravitational force in the universe, and that includes the gravity that holds our bodies together. Well, that leaves 5% of the universe that remains, of which most of it is interstellar dust. And here is the slide. Can you see this? Can you show the slide, please? So there you are. Invisible atoms, about 4%, hydrogen and helium, about 0.5%, and other visible atoms, 0.01%. So all the galaxies, which could be about 500 billion galaxies, all the Milky Way galaxy, Andromeda, Virgo, the immediate neighborhood of 25 to 50 galaxies, which have billions of stars and trillions of planetary systems, that's about 0.01% of what's out there. And the rest of it is still a mystery. We have no idea what it is. And so when you hear this for the first time, you say, you know, what am I doing here? Is there any purpose or meaning to human existence? And are all our religious ideas and spiritual ideas just cultural mythology? Because if you know these scientific facts, then perhaps we are irrelevant. And planet Earth is a capricious anomaly in the sea of space, in a mindless void somewhere in the junkyard of infinity. And yet, what I want to share with you today is something much more important. The real fundamental fact of the universe is not that it exists. Even more fundamental to the fact that the universe exists is the fact that we are aware that it exists. That it is our consciousness that makes the universe manifest. And that consciousness is, you know, if you were to draw what would be called a cosmic dessert cake, you'd see a chocolate cake, 70% is dark matter, dark energy, 25% dark matter, visible hydrogen, helium. Intelligent life would be a little bunch of cinnamon you can see at the top of the whipped cream, and through that intelligent life, a human nervous system that can begin to comprehend all this. And this is a very remarkable fact, because this means that cosmic evolution took 14 billion years to create you and me, and we are actually an activity of the universe through which the universe is becoming aware of itself. And this is perhaps a new idea in modern cosmology, but it's not a new idea at all as far as the ancient wisdom tradition of Vedanta is concerned, or Kashmir Shaivism, which use these Mahavakyas to give us the same wisdom. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the universe. Because without you, the universe remains a radically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. The fact that it has color and form and texture is because consciousness makes that manifest. Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. The beautiful words like Jagat Mithya, the world as a projection of consciousness, or Sankalp, the power of intention in consciousness that makes the universe manifest. So here we are at a very important crossroads in our cosmological evolution. We have created capacities and technologies that, combined with very primitive tribal identities, could spell devastation for the planet. We have the capacity today, and it's only increasing, where you could have a handheld device like your BlackBerry or iPhone, and using the bits that you spoke about, you could interfere with air traffic signals, cause a nuclear plant to leak, interfere with a pacemaker, a respirator, cut off electricity from a city, poison the food chain. So a limited identity of consciousness combined with the power of modern technology is not a good combination. We risk our extinction and risk the extinction of all other species and life on planet Earth, which is a very rare phenomenon in the universe as far as we know it. On the other hand, we have the same technology which, combined with the evolutionary impulse of the universe, which is Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, truth, goodness, beauty, evolution, mathematical truth, but also musical truth, and the truth that is behind the forces that we consider evolutionary, or sattva, or sattvic forces, could actually make this planet a new civilization of peace, social justice, economic well-being, and ultimately a healthier and happier, intelligent life. And so with that as the background, what I want to share with you is some of the major scientific breakthroughs that are occurring today in science that are leading to a new paradigm of understanding of our own consciousness. These are some of the really cutting-edge discoveries of the last 10 years. So I'll start with, where should I start? We can start with quantum biology, okay, which was an unknown discipline till only, say, 5-10 years ago. But 2 years ago, we had a conference at Google on quantum biology, which is the next frontier of understanding our biological self, that your body is a network not only of information, but at the most fundamental levels, it behaves in a way that is non-local. So, you know, how does a human body, which has 100 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, each cell performing 100,000 activities, how does it all keep it together? How does the human body think thoughts, play a piano, kill germs, remove toxins, and make a baby all at the same time? And while a human body can do that, it also tracks the movement of stars and planets, because your biological rhythms are the mathematical rhythms of the whole universe. They are the symphony of the whole cosmos. So if you're familiar with our wisdom tradition in Vedanta, you will probably have heard the phrase yatha pinde tatha brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the human mind, so the cosmic mind. And so that we are actually biologically fractals or holographic expressions of the total universe. And that's really the meaning of the expression aham brahmasmi. Your identity cannot be contained or confined to the boundaries of your skin, because the entire web of life and also the total universe is responsible for the activity, which is our body. Our body is a verb. It's not a noun. It's an activity, and it's a particular activity at 13.8 billion years of evolutionary time. And once we understand that it's an activity, then we also understand at a deeper level that activity is an activity that is non-local, that is beyond even the quantum world. Because, you know, the quantum, we are still dealing with bits. But you go beyond the bits, you end up with the quantum vacuum, which is a field of possibilities, which is the womb of creation. And so there's nothing new about what Hawking and others are saying when the universe began from nothing. This is the shunyata of Buddhists. It is the infinite void of Vedantists and Sufi mystics. It's what the great Sufi poet Rumi said when he said, "We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust." Look at these worlds, spinning out of nothingness. This is within your power. The emptiness from where we come is not just an empty void, it's the womb of creation. And nature goes to exactly the same place to create a galaxy of stars, cluster of nebulas, or a human body, because all the atoms in your body were manufactured in the crucible of stars. We are circulating stardust that's recycling and has become luminous in the fact that it is aware of itself. And so the realm of quantum biology is taking us to the understanding of the deepest secrets of nature, where everything exists as possibility. And if you have read any of the mathematical work of Sir Roger Penrose, who talks about Planck scale space-time geometry, which is the most fundamental levels of nature, he says at Planck scale space-time geometry, which is about 25 times smaller than the order of magnitude of an atom, everything disappears. But yet everything is contained as potential. The raw materials of the universe, including gravity, space-time, spin, charge, but the raw materials of our mind, the evolutionary impulse of truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, what are called Platonic values, and also mathematical truth and musical truth. Something that was known to the great rishis of India when they spoke of the most fundamental level known as Brahman. You know, Brahman, Atman is Brahman, the self of the individual, also the self of the universe. And that's the cutting edge science that is now beginning to look at the universe as non-local, outside of space-time, which is, by the way, such a fundamental idea in, again, ancient wisdom traditions, particularly India, that your consciousness transcends space-time, that your consciousness fills all of space-time, cannot be confined to your brain or your body, because it is the ground of being, and the ground of being of the individual is the ground of being of the whole universe, of all beings. And so this begins to resolve some of the problems that classical quantum mechanics, which has about 11 theories right now, has struggled with the measurement problem, with wave-particle duality, observer effect, the realm of pure potentiality, the realm where we experience free will, creativity. But for me personally, as a physician, the two more exciting areas are genetic indeterminism and neuroplasticity. The fact that you, through your habits of thinking and feeling and relating and behaving, can actually change the structure of your brain and the form of your brain, and also influence the on-off mechanisms in your genes. Only 5% of our genetic structure is deterministic. If somebody is born with Down syndrome or has a genetic defect like cardiomyopathy or a specific gene for Alzheimer's, that's about 5% of the population. 95% of your genes are influenced through consciousness. So this emerging paradigm is shifting our attention from the world of matter to the world of consciousness. And this is the thesis of the emerging paradigm, that consciousness, which is the ground of our existence, differentiates simultaneously into all these things that we call reality, from nature's forces to our own behaviors, to environmental situations, to our thinking, to our knowing, to our moods, to our emotions, to our perception, to our personal relationships and social interactions. They all differentiate from the ground of our existence, which is consciousness. And so this emerging paradigm is getting rid of what is called reductionism in science. You know, this morning when Vishal was speaking, he was talking about systems. So nobody is talking about direct cause-effect relationships in science these days. We're talking about systems. We have to go even beyond systems to see that actually the systems themselves are part of a non-local field of creativity, intentionality, or consciousness. So again, to quote the rishis of India, know that one thing by knowing which everything else is known. Reductionism is slowly falling apart in science because it doesn't work. All reductionism in medicine is based on, you know, direct cause-effect relationships, and as soon as we tackle one problem, there are others. So you get rid of a particular infection and you find all these other things that start to crop up. We still haven't gotten rid of things like malaria and tuberculosis and smallpox in many parts of the world, but we have modern epidemics of cardiovascular disease and cancer and addictive behavior, which is really the cause of many other illnesses. And so the emerging paradigm is saying, how can we look at the future of well-being in a way that is more holistic, more integrated? So this is a slide I drew for a talk I gave recently to the American Heart Association, because, you know, cardiologists focus only on the heart. And yet, when you look at the heart-brain connection, you recognize that everything from emotions to sensations to feelings to perceptions influence cardiac activity, brain activity, neurotransmitters, which everyone's familiar with these days, opiates, serotonin, vasopressin, oxytocin, which happen to be neurotransmitters, but also modulate the activity of the immune system. And there is no way of understanding human biology unless we look at it in a very integrated manner, and that you cannot isolate parts. Parts are fictions of imagination. Even molecules are fictions of imagination, because a molecule is not a structure, it's an activity. Just like a bit is an activity. It's an activity, it's a verb. And the universe is a verb, the body is a verb, it's an activity. In consciousness, there are no nouns. Nouns are fictions, and they are conventions of language, but they're not descriptions of reality. And that was the great insight that the Buddha had when, there's the famous lecture of the Buddha where he never spoke a word. He just came out in the deer park at Benares and stood with his disciples and held a rose in his hand. And at one point, Ananda smiled and the lecture was over. Nobody else spoke a word. And so all the disciples went to Ananda and said, "What did you see?" "We saw a flower." And Ananda said, "Yes, I saw a flower, but I also saw rainbows and sunshine and earth and water and wind and air and the infinite void and the whole history of the universe that had stopped for a moment of perception pretending to be a flower." Now that is what we would call cosmic vision, enlightened vision, to see that every event in the total universe is a conspiracy of the total universe. And that whole conspiracy is occurring in consciousness. And now that we have the technology to track our thoughts, today you can take a carbon atom, you can radio label it, you can put it in a sugar molecule, and you can watch what's happening in the brain. And you can see that when you are in love, there are certain parts of the brain that light up, and this could be romantic love, or love for your children, or love for the world, or love for that abstraction, the mystery that we call God, that your brain lights up in ways that integrate the whole body into its healing, self-repairing mode. So that Rabindranath Tagore's famous phrase, "Love is not a mere emotion, love is not a mere sentiment, it's the ultimate truth at the heart of creation." It's that force that binds all the other forces together. So here is a slide that I want to share with you that I made after my work at the Gallup organization, where I think you know what Gallup does. We collect data, and right now we're collecting data. I'm a senior scientist at Gallup as well, and I have access to all the information through interns at Gallup who work with me. And we've been collecting data on well-being and the future of well-being for our civilization, if you will. The most well-documented data on what well-being is. So in Gallup, we define well-being as a combination of career well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, and community well-being. And we see that they're all inseparable. You can't separate one from the other. And then we gather data in all these areas. And I want to share with you some of it because there's a lot of it. And of course, this particular slide does not address spiritual well-being. Scientists try to shy away from spiritual well-being, but I'll come to it because we are now addressing this even at institutions like Gallup. So let's look at some of this because it's very interesting. Over here, everyone I meet is very passionate about their work. And that's why you get such brilliant minds and such brilliant outcomes, because everyone here is really passionate about what they're doing. It's a rare phenomenon, though. In the world, only 20% of people, when asked, "Are you happy with what you do?" are actually say yes. An alarming statistic is that more people die in our civilization on Monday morning at 9 o'clock than any other time of cardiovascular accidents. This is an extraordinary accomplishment for which only the human species can take credit, because I don't think any other animal knows the difference between Monday and Tuesday, and that's because they hate their jobs, okay? And that affects their physical well-being. So here's some very interesting data. If the person you work for, your immediate supervisor, your manager, your boss, your CEO, if he or she criticizes you, your rate of disengagement is about 25%, and within 6 months you fall sick if they criticize you. But if they actually ignore you, they don't criticize you, they ignore you, you get even worse outcome. Your rate of disengagement goes up to 45%, and you get sick also, because you would rather be criticized than ignored. At least you're being noticed. If your boss or your manager or supervisor notices a single strength that you have, a single strength, and acknowledges your strength, your rate of disengagement goes down to less than 1%. And the amount of disengaged people we have in the US workforce, they were saying we need 600 jobs, 600 million jobs, but we need 600 million jobs that people want to do, are passionate about. And we have ideas how that could be created, and you mentioned some of them this morning. But what we call in our Indian philosophy, dharma, if you feel that you're dharmically fitting into the ecosystem, the data shows that the US economy suffers about $300 billion of lost income in disengaged and actively disengaged workers. So disengaged, the difference between disengaged and actively disengaged workers is that the actively disengaged workers come to work not only unhappy, but with the express intention of making other people unhappy. Huge economic toll. There's social well-being. Social well-being means your immediate circle of friends and family. Here's some very interesting data, and these are, measurements done by Gallup, which has specialized in measuring these things for over 100 years. So if you have a happy friend, your happiness goes up, your happiness score goes up by 15%. But if your happy friend has a happy friend whom you don't know, it goes up another 10%. And if your happy friend's happy friend has a happy friend, it keeps going up. And so when you first look at this data, you say, how can the happiness of people that I don't know affect my happiness? And is that important? And of course, we are recognizing it's very important because your psychological state, your emotional state has direct consequences on your neural networks. There's no event that happens in the mind that doesn't have a representation in the brain, and there's no event that happens in the brain that doesn't have a representation in the body. So happiness is a very crucial factor in our physical well-being, including immunomodulation. So how does the happiness of people that I don't know affect me and my state of well-being? And the answer seems to be at two levels. One is a fairly simple thing, that when you and I are having a conversation, the conversation is influenced by all the people in my life. I might be worried about my sick mother, and you might be worried about the economy or what's going to happen to your stock in Facebook. And so, we have all these influences in our conversation, and those influences are influenced by others. Ultimately, even the happiness of your perceived enemies is important for your well-being. In fact, the best way to diffuse your enemy is to increase their capacity for being happy, which is something that wisdom traditions have said. But there's a deeper reason, and the deeper reason is what Erwin Schrödinger, one of the pioneers in quantum physics, said. And by the way, you may or may not know, but Schrödinger was a Vedantist, and as was Niels Bohr, who were the pioneers of the Copenhagen interpretation of physics. He said consciousness is a singular that has no plural. That in the deeper reality, there's only one body, and the body is the recycling of stardust, which is also our own body. There's only one mind, which is the recycling of ideas and the evolution of ideas, both disruptive and not disruptive. You see, because evolution proceeds through punctuated disequilibrium as well. So there's this complementarity of disruption and continuity. Both coexist. And those are the quantum leaps of creativity that punctuate evolution. And so if consciousness is a singular that has no plural, then we are all byproducts of the one mind. As Rumi says, you know, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're also the ocean in the drop. And it's a shift in perspective, really, that creates that idea that I am also the web of relationships that we call life. And this has huge implications from everything from obesity to type 2 diabetes to all the modern epidemics of mankind, of humanity, that they are affected by our social well-being. And that social well-being now is expanding through social networks, because if you think of social networks, whatever the networks are, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, what are these social networks? They are extensions of the human mind. So we are actually, through technology now, laying the neural networks for a planetary mind, unbeknownst to us, that is changing our identity with what is happening in Syria, Tunisia, Egypt, Occupy Wall Street, the Anna Hazare movement in India. This is an upwelling from the collective mind that is laying the neural networks of a new extended mind, which ultimately belongs to one mind. We're not only the same body in the deeper, beyond our perceptual differences, ethnic, racial, and national, our deeper identity is the recycling of the same body, stardust, and the recycling of the mind that evolves through continuity and disruption at the same time, or what we can call quantum leaps of imagination and intention. A new vision of evolution is creeping in. Physical well-being, going back to very simple facts like how much sleep do you get? Is your food rich in what are called phytochemicals or energy derived from the sun? Because our body is made up of, as I said, it was manufactured in the crucible of stars, in blazing centers of radioactivity. And those are contained, our Ayurveda would say, in the colors and the tastes of food. So if you have the 6 tastes, rasa, that makes up our body, and you have the 7 colors of the rainbow, then that's the phytochemicals that make your body. So there's a lot of truth to the wisdom tradition of Ayurveda, which instead of measuring data was looking at the quality of experience of life, whether it was taste or sound or touch or smell. So all of the healing science of Ayurveda is based on what are called qualitative experiences of the world that we experience through the 5 senses, that begin to self-regulate our own bodies, the homeostatic mechanisms. And that includes physical exercise, yoga, pranayama, techniques for mind-body integration, and today, through neuroplasticity and genetic modulation, the new frontier that is being called bioregulation. So as we move into the future, we'll be using information technologies instead of molecules, because we'll be looking at the body as a network of information, energy, and ultimately consciousness. Financial well-being, whilst over here, every day there's a new IPO, the world still is suffering an immense economic breakdown because of an old paradigm in economy, which was basically convince people to spend money that they haven't earned, to buy things that they don't need, to impress people that they don't like. And so of the $2.2 trillion that circulates in the world's markets every day, less than 2% actually provides meaningful goods or services. And the future of our economic well-being has to improve the quality of life on our planet through the technologies that we have. And finally, community well-being, so beautifully summarized again in our Indian Vedic culture and tradition, seva, satsang, and simran. Simran is to remember your true identity as a cosmic being. Seva is doing things for the ecosystem without any selfish purpose. And satsang is the gathering together of people with a common aim. This is a satsang that we have here, a beautiful satsang at Thai. So when we combine those activities, we are looking at true well-being. And this is the future of well-being. It does not address, as I said, spiritual well-being. We were talking at this earlier at lunch. I was talking about, with my friends, about a meeting we had with His Holiness the Dalai Lama at a group of social scientists. And he was bemoaning the fact that we all are so fascinated by the harmful effects of stress. He said, why don't you study joy? Why don't you study the biological effects of compassion, of love, of equanimity, what in Buddhist traditions are called divine attitudes, truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, evolution. And so, you know, that shift did come about, and people came back 5 years later. We met again with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and actually the social scientists presented what they call the happiness formula, which I don't have time to go into, but there are certain things that determine people's happiness: the set point in the brain, conditions of living, the choices we make every day. And so there's a lot of good research on what makes people happy and how it relates to success in business, how it relates to good relationships, how it relates to intuition, imagination, and creativity. But one thing His Holiness mentioned, he said it does not, all your social studies do not address the deeper level of existential suffering, the fact that we worry about the future, the fact that we think of old age and infirmity and death, that we all know that one day we are going to die, that we remember the past and sometimes have resentments about and grievances about things that are no longer relevant. One of the social scientists said, if you kick a dog, the dog will also remember. You meet the dog 5 years later, it will attack you. It has memory, but unlike a human being, it won't plan for 5 years how to get even. And all our problems in the world are because we're still trying to get even for past hurts. Nelson Mandela once said, having a resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it'll kill your enemy. So there's a deeper realm of spiritual well-being that I shall speak about on my next visit to you. But that deeper realm of spiritual well-being is dependent on looking at our own shadow energies, by understanding states of consciousness, so beautifully described in the tradition of Vedanta: God consciousness, cosmic consciousness, unity consciousness, understanding the multidimensional nature of consciousness as it projects into different dimensions of space and time, understanding the meaning of death and the true meaning of yoga through being, which is called Raj Yoga, self-reflection, asking fundamental questions like, who am I, what do I want, and who's asking those questions. The yoga of love, which is the most fundamental feeling we have, the highest feeling we have. The yoga of the intellect, which this crowd is amazing at, you know, the creation of the scientific understanding of our existence. And finally, the yoga of action, which is karma yoga, which is performing or making those choices that become the evolutionary impulse of the universe, and the deeper understanding of time and how we actually can conquer the experience of mortality by getting in touch with that part of ourselves which is timeless. Here are 5 really fundamental breakthroughs that nobody is arguing about. So whilst I've given you lots of ideas to think about, but these are real breakthroughs right now. Your body is a process, it's not a structure. It's an activity. Your body is an energy and information field. The future belongs to understanding the body as information and using new treatments that are based on information. Your genes are not deterministic, with a few exceptions. You can turn them on and off by the way you live your life. You can change your experience of time, and your own consciousness is the key to all this. These are regular breakthroughs that are being accepted by science today. And they have come about as a result of a scientific understanding of human consciousness. So here are some of the future technologies that we all can look forward to, and you shall be the pioneers of these technologies. Neuroplasticity through neural feedback, where you can actually measure the electromagnetic activity of the brain feedback, and already these technologies exist. I'm sure some of you are doing this. There are young people at MIT lab that can give you technologies where you can look at your brain waves and use the feedback to move the Milky Way galaxy on your iPad. So thoughts and how they control reality is becoming reality. Bioregulation through not only neural feedback, but cardiac feedback, or what we call heart rate variability, skin resistance, stem cells and cloning technology, not through stem cells derived from elsewhere, but your own stem cells, taken from your saliva, or from plants, or from red cells, your own body's intelligence going back to pluripotential cells that you can help and coax into different cells in your body. So you take a little bit of saliva, go back to the stem cell and coax it back to becoming a replacement part, new eyes, new heart, new and nanobots, which will be nanocomputers based on quantum biology. And these nanobots will be as big as the red cells in your body, and you will be able to give them instructions through your handheld device, very precise instructions on how to replace old parts of the body, to coax and repair organs, and to actually clean up your nervous system so it doesn't age with things like Alzheimer's. And genetic modulation and enzyme induction, not only through technology, but through consciousness. So there's a research study that we are participating in right now with Elizabeth Blackburn, who's at the University of California and San Francisco, right around the corner, who showed that Buddhist monks and others who practice 3 months of mindful awareness meditation, they have an increase in telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls the length of telomeres, which is your biological clock, just through their minds. And so we are replicating her study now, but with neural feedback, we'll be able to accelerate that. So basically reset your biological clock for aging so that you will be able to actually have more control over your biology. And then the whole frontier of personalized medicine, where hopefully you'll have a little device like the one I'm wearing, this little bracelet. I wanted to show you. I've shown this to many people in the last 2 days. But here's a little bracelet which has a USB. And this is monitoring everything that's happening right now in terms of my energy expenditure, calories, the amount of exercise I do, but also soon brain waves and heart rate variability. So you literally have an extension of yourself. So this morning I was mentioning at breakfast to someone that we need a me plus, and he said, why don't you call it Mera plus? An extension of yourself and all the information in the cloud, and then sharing this information with all those that you love and care about so you can help their well-being as well. I notice I've run out of time, so I want to take you through a couple very simple reflection right now. Please close your eyes. Okay, before you do that, before you close your eyes, as you're listening to me right now, turn your attention to who's listening. So as you're listening to me, be aware of the listener. And that presence you feel right now, that's your soul. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom before the lecture. Mind is a conversation that occurs in the presence of your soul. That part of you was there when you were a baby. Different mind, different body, different experience. But experience in that consciousness, which is primordial and ultimate, and your ticket to freedom. It's the realm of infinite creativity and pure potentiality and pure knowledge, and, as I said, disruptive as well as continuous. It's that which propagates as the evolutionary impulse of the universe. And so the Vedanta says, get in touch with the seer in the midst of the scenery. You are not the scenery, you are the seer in which the scenery comes and goes. Now, close your eyes and put your attention in the heart. I want you to reflect on just 2 or 3 questions in the remaining time that we have, okay? So the first question is, who am I? The second question is, who's asking the question? The third question is, what do I want? And finally, what do I want for me, but also for my family, for my community, and for the world, for my children and their children and their children. And finally, what am I going to do about it? Thank you very much.